of the personality of the purusha or the male person or the husband, and then it is transferred to the female, but the soul is coming through the semen, and then it is going and doing its job. So let's read the translation and purport, and we can discuss further.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
The personality of Godhead said, under the supervision of the Supreme Lord, and according to the result of his work, the living entity, the soul, is made to enter into the womb of a woman through the particle of male semen to assume a particular type of body. Hare Krishna.
This is here. Thank you, Prabhuji. This is very clear here. So it says under the supervision of Supreme Lord. The two things are there. Here you can see. But the thing is, the soul is made to enter. So there is no choice here. So this is something which, because of that's why conditioned soul. So it is made to enter into the womb of a woman through the particle of male semen. So it goes and takes shelter. The semen, in the semen particle of male semen is the sperms. So go there and take shelter, and then assume a particular type of body. So particular type of body here specifically is defining the human form of life is more defined, because in the previous chapter it is described. For other forms of life a brief description is given, but this is more in context to the human life. So let's read the purport and have more discussion. Srila Prabhupada has given a beautiful purport.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
As stated in the last chapter, after suffering different kinds of hellish conditions, a man comes again to the human form of body. The same topic is continued in this chapter. In order to give a particular type of human form to a person who has already suffered hellish life, the soul is transferred to the semen of a man who is just suitable to become his father. During sexual intercourse, the soul is transferred through the semen of the father into the mother's womb in order to produce a particular type of body. This process is applicable to all embodied living entities, but it is especially mentioned for the man who has transferred to the Andhatamishra hell. After suffering there, when he who has had many types of hellish bodies, like those of dogs and hawks, is to come again to the human form. He is given the chance to take his birth in the same type of body from which he degraded himself to hell. Everything is done by the supervision of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Material nature supplies the body, but it does so under the direction of the Super Soul. It is said in Bhagavad Gita that a living entity is wandering in this material world on a chariot made by material nature. The Supreme Lord, as a super soul, is always present with the individual soul. He directs material nature to supply a particular type of body to the individual soul according to the result of his work, and material nature supplies it. Here, one word, Rate Kanashraya, is very significant because it indicates that it is not the semen of the man that creates life within the womb of a woman. Rather, the living entity, the soul, takes shelter in a particle of semen and is then pushed into the womb of a woman. Then the body develops. There is no possibility of creating a living entity without the presence of the soul simply by sexual intercourse. The materialistic theory that there is no soul and that a child is born simply by material combination of the sperm and ovum is not very feasible. It is unacceptable.
Thank you
Hare
so much.
Krishna.
Now you can see how it is so detailed, so scientific. Vedic knowledge is more scientific than the science we now study. Means it goes into the deeper realities of science that science can't even uh, touch yet. So maybe someday they can touch and understand that part. So here it continues from the last chapter. Srila Prabhupada says that different kinds of hellish conditions. The last chapter it is mentioned that because of their sinful association, men and women experience many kinds of miserable conditions in the hells known as Tamishra, Amdha Tamishra, and Raurava. So these different things are provided based upon the different sinful activities. That is more detailed in the fifth canto. But here, just giving like some sinful activity will have some reaction. But then it says, by the arrangement of the Lord or karma, one who maintains his family by sinful means suffers in the hell called Andatta Mishra. Maintains his family by sinful means. So one who maintains his family by sinful means, he goes to the Andhata Mishra hell because of the reactions. So once that is there, after going through, then what happens? Coming from the hell, taking all whatever the punishments is required for that particular sin, then it goes to different other life forms, and finally, like he becomes purified and is reborn as a human being. That purification can happen by different ways, but if it is going by as a cycle of nature, so it will come at some point. Some purification happens, and it comes because already he had taken all the sins, means all the sins. He has taken the punishment for the sins, and then going through lower forms, so get an opportunity again to come to the human form. But it can also happen by the mercy, if they get association of devotees, mercy of a devotee also, this can happen. So it can many aspects of that, but in natural course also it happens. So there is always a second chance is given, so that one can again realize what he has come for and perfect his life and go back to Godhead. So that option is given multiple times in the life of a living entity. So here it says, uh, like particular type of human form to a person who has already suffered hellish life. Soul is then transferred to the semen of a woman, and this hellish life is being uh, dealt by the subtle body, which is made up of three different elements: mana, buddhi, and ahankara, which is covering that soul. And because of that subtle body, we have the inclinations what we have in this life. We have certain, every living entity, every human being has a special proclivity and inclination to do certain things in a certain way, and that is because of those impressions which are there in the human form of life. Not in animalistic life, is just not, there is no reaction and action philosophy. So see how scientific it is and how detailed it is. When I first read this verse previously, when I read it for the first time, I was totally amazed at how depth it has gone into, to for us to understand. It's so clear, and if means, and it will become clear, maybe not clear for everyone, but it will become clear as we would understand it further. So it says that how it is decided: the semen of a man who is just suitable to become a father. So the soul has to come and take entry, and it takes entry going to the semen and take ashraya of the kana. Kana means the sperms, so it takes one of that. And this process is applicable in all embodied living entities, not only human form, everywhere. But here it is giving a reference to the Andhatamishra hell, which goes through that flow. After suffering there, when he has had mentioned for the and then it is going, as you're mentioning, dogs, hogs, and different life forms, again goes into the human form. So that chance is, that's why whatever chance we have received in this form of life, we have to utilize it well, because this is very rare chance to be a human being. Very, very rare, very rare. And you can understand now with this verse also giving that thing. Everything is done by the supervision of Supreme Personality of Godhead. Material nature provides all the things. And but here it says in Bhagavad Gita that a living entity is wandering in this material world on a chariot made by material nature. So that particular chariot is, one is going through that. Supreme Lord as Super Soul is always present. So whichever living form it is or non-living, Super Soul is there. It's always there. But more, like, if you see the previous chapter, it tells about how the level of consciousness develops from an inanimate to a jiva, uh, which has life in it, and from a lower form of life, like lower form, which would not have limited consciousness, or covered consciousness, and then the consciousness a little bit develop when it becomes like four-legged animal, and then how in human form there is higher realization, one can understand, experience, and go into self-realization process that has been described. So that's why it's very important. The human form of life is very, very rare and very, very important to take advantage of. So Srila Prabhupada says, like, bad bargain, take utilization of bad bargain, because we are still conditioned, but still we have that uh, window to for self-realization, so we can utilize that. So here it says that the Supreme Lord as Super Soul is always present within the living soul. He directs the material nature to supply a particular type of body. Now, particular type of body here refers to whatever form of body we can have. We can have different shapes. All human beings don't look alike, and there is a female form, male form, any form can come out. So that is being decided there. And then individual soul, according to the result of the work and material nature, supplies it. So here one thing is very important. Srila Prabhupada gave Reta Kanashraya. So the soul is taking shelter of that sperm. Then only there is the living form which is come out. Otherwise, simple by sexual intercourse, a living form can come out like that. But does it happen? Most of the times, people try and they don't have. So that perfect combination should happen to have a living entity coming into the life. So that is also our responsibility when a living entity comes to our life, to show them the real path so that they don't again come back to the womb of mother. So that is the goal of the self-realization. So, and then it says, rather the living entity takes shelter of the particle of the semen, which is sperm, and then is pushed into the womb of a woman. Then the body develops. So that's why the materialistic theory that there is no soul and that the body is born simply by material combination is not accepted by the Vedic philosophy. And also, if you think in the scientific way, also, it is not possible. Like even test tube baby, when they are making, the sperm has component of soul, otherwise it may not come to the living form. So the soul is the living and the guiding force. If that is not there, sperm and ovum movement there, they cannot create another living entity, or another living entity cannot manifest. I know there would be many questions in this one, but if there are any realizations, scientific aspect or Vedic aspect, we can discuss more. I think this chapter is all for about that. And this gives a very vivid description. And what is the message for us? That this human form is very rare. We have gotten it somehow. Let's utilize it however we can by association of devotee, by taking devotees and um, taking the shelter of Guru and focusing on the holy name, so that we can perfect whatever we can do in this life. Perfection is in Lord's hand, but we can do our endeavor to do that in a very rightful mood or mind. That is the message that I think this verse gives. But any other realizations, any other things would be are welcome. I'm pausing here.